The night was calm on Mars when the signal was first discovered. A research team working inside a small outpost near the icy poles detected something strange beneath the frozen ground. At first, they thought it was just another glitch from their machines, but the reading grew stronger and clearer. Dr. Elena Morris, the lead scientist, watched in silence as the computers translated the pattern. It was not noise. It was a message. The team gathered around the screen as symbols appeared, one after another glowing in pale green. They were shocked because the symbols were not alien. They were human letters, old and ancient, written in a forgotten script. The words appeared slowly. Our fleet sleeps. Awaken only if the universe needs us. Everyone inside the lab froze. The youngest researcher whispered that it must be a joke. How could a message written thousands of years ago be buried under the Martian ice? Humanity had only reached Mars in the past few decades. No one had an answer. The scientists sent the data back to Earth for verification. Within hours, the message reached world leaders. Politicians and military experts gathered in secret rooms, whispering about the possible meaning. Could there be ships hidden somewhere? Was it just an old code left behind by ancient explorers? No history book mentioned such a thing. Yet the message was real, and it was waiting to be understood. Dr. Elena and her team worked day and night, digging deeper. They soon discovered a strange metallic object buried in the ice, larger than any known structure on Mars. The metal was not rusted or broken. It was perfect, smooth like glass, and it pulsed faintly with blue light. When they touched it, the entire surface lit up as if recognizing human presence. Alarms sounded inside the base, not because of danger, but because the object was alive. The scientists realized it was some kind of machine, maybe a beacon, maybe a lock. The message had not been just a warning. It was an invitation. Meanwhile, in orbit above Earth, powerful telescopes picked up something else. A strange ripple in space, like a wound opening in the dark. The ripple was moving closer to the solar system. No one could identify it. The signal from Mars and the space disturbance seemed connected. Military forces grew nervous. Some leaders wanted to destroy the beacon, fearing it would call something dangerous. Others argued that the message spoke of humanity's fleet, and perhaps it was their only hope against whatever was coming. The world was divided, but one thing was certain: the universe was no longer silent. In the following weeks, secret excavation teams were sent to Mars. The metallic structure was uncovered further, revealing symbols etched into its walls. Strangely, the symbols were older than any known human language, yet every scientist could somehow understand them. The words glowed softly. To those born of Earth, you carry our blood. Only you can awaken the fleet. The scientists realized this was not the work of aliens. It was human. But how? How could ancient humans have built machines on Mars tens of thousands of years before history even began? No answer could be found. Fear and excitement spread across the world. News of the discovery was hidden from the public, but rumors leaked through secret channels, creating whispers about an ancient army sleeping in the dark. Soldiers were deployed to guard the excavation sites. The beacon pulsed stronger each day, as if counting down to something. At night, Dr. Elena often stood outside the dome, staring at the Martian sky. She wondered if humanity was ready for whatever truth was buried beneath their feet. She wondered if the fleet spoken of in the message was real, and if it was, where it was hidden. Deep underground, the beacon's light suddenly changed. It no longer pulsed slowly, but instead released a sharp beam of energy into the sky. The beam shot past the thin Martian atmosphere and into space, a signal that could be seen for light years. Humanity had not just discovered something. They had announced their presence to the universe. On distant worlds, strange beings looked up as the signal reached their skies. Alien empires that had long forgotten humanity's first rise now stirred uneasily. They remembered old wars, old legends of a species that had once shaken the galaxy. The name Terrans carried fear, and the thought of their fleet awakening again was terrifying. The first whispers spread among the stars. The ancients of Earth. They are waking. Back on Mars, the humans still had no idea what storm they had unleashed. The beacon continued to hum, and beneath the ice something vast began to move. The ground trembled slightly, sending vibrations through the outpost. Machines detected massive structures deep below the surface, stretching for miles. Dr. Elena could not believe her eyes when the scanner revealed the shape. It was not a building. It was a ship. A colossal warship larger than any human had ever imagined was buried in the Martian crust, asleep for thousands of years, waiting for the right moment. The discovery shocked even the most skeptical leaders on Earth. Now they had proof. The message had been true. Humanity's ancestors had built something far beyond the reach of modern science. But why had they hidden it? Why had they erased all memory of it? Some whispered it was because of enemies too powerful to face. Others believed the fleet was hidden to protect the future, a gift for a generation not yet born. As the excavation continued, the first part of the massive ship began to emerge from the ice. Its hull glowed faintly, smooth and black, with strange patterns that shifted like living light. The scientists could feel something inside the ship, a presence that almost felt like it was watching them. Dr. Elena stood closest to it, her hand trembling as she touched the surface. The ship responded instantly, releasing a deep hum that echoed across the frozen plains. Every human near it felt a sudden rush of energy, like the heartbeat of something awakening after endless sleep. The warship was alive. It was waiting for humanity to claim it. But far across the galaxy, alien fleets had already begun to mobilize. The universe had heard the signal, and it was afraid. For humanity, the discovery was only the beginning. The true story was yet to unfold, but the first step had already been taken. The fleet was stirring, and the universe was not ready. The frozen silence of Antarctica had always seemed eternal, but that silence was broken the moment the world leaders authorized the secret mission. Hidden deep under the thick ice sheet, far from the eyes of the public, a massive underground facility was uncovered. Satellite images showed nothing, for the entire base had been constructed in an age no one could explain. The entrance was discovered by accident when seismic scans revealed hollow chambers under the ice. What the team found inside stunned them beyond words. Giant doors made of black metal stood buried in the glacier, smooth and flawless, untouched by time. They were not natural formations, and no known human civilization had the technology to build such things. Scientists and soldiers gathered in awe as they prepared to open the gates. When the doors slowly parted with a groaning sound that echoed like thunder across the frozen desert, a blinding light spilled out from the dark cavern, and for the first time, the sleeping warships of humanity's past were revealed. The chamber inside was colossal, stretching for miles beneath the ice, larger than any human-made structure in history. Rows upon rows of warships stood silently like titans in slumber. Their hulls were perfect, untouched by rust or decay, as if time itself had refused to touch them. Strange, glowing lines ran across their bodies, pulsing faintly like veins carrying blood. Each ship seemed to breathe, and some whispered it was as though they were alive. Soldiers walked carefully, their footsteps echoing inside the hollow chamber, their eyes filled with both terror and wonder. The largest ship, standing at the center, was unlike anything humanity had ever built. It towered like a mountain, with spires rising from its surface and weapons so vast that no modern army could hope to match its power. The mere sight of it was enough to make every man and woman present feel small, as if standing before a god of war. Dr. Elena Morris stood at the edge of the platform, staring at the ships. She could not speak. Her mind struggled to understand how humans of the past long before recorded history, could have built a fleet that looked more advanced than anything in the present. One of the scientists whispered that these ships looked like they had been built yesterday. Another said maybe they had never aged at all. The air inside the chamber was strangely warm, carrying a faint hum that vibrated in the bones of everyone who entered. It was as if the chamber itself was alive, protecting the warships until the day they were needed. The soldiers tested their scanners, but the machines went haywire. Energy readings surged to levels beyond comprehension. The ships seemed to generate their own power, not from fuel or nuclear energy, but from something deeper, stranger, a force no one could identify. The discovery shook every government on Earth. Military leaders debated fiercely. Some argued the ships were too dangerous, that awakening them could doom humanity. Others said they were a gift from the ancestors, a last weapon left for their children. While politicians argued, something unexpected happened. One of the ships stirred. It was smaller than the central giant, but still massive, longer than 10 skyscrapers placed end to end. Without any command, its hull lit up with dazzling light, and the entire chamber shook as ancient engines rumbled to life. The soldiers raised, their weapons in panic, but Dr. Elena shouted for them to hold fire. The ship rose slightly from its cradle, levitating as if gravity no longer mattered. Strange symbols appeared across its hull, glowing brighter and brighter until they formed. Words in human language. I am eternal spear. I await my commander. The silence that followed was crushing. The ship had spoken, and it spoke in a human voice, deep and resonant, vibrating through the chamber. It was not mechanical, but almost alive, like an ancient warrior waiting for orders. Dr. Elena stepped forward, her heart racing. She reached out with her hand, and the ship responded instantly. A beam of soft light extended from its surface, surrounding her like a gentle embrace. Her body trembled as images flooded her mind, visions of ancient battles in the stars, fleets, of humanity clashing against monstrous alien empires, fire raining upon worlds, and voices of commanders long gone echoing with courage and defiance. She gasped and pulled back, but the vision lingered. Humanity had once been far greater than it ever dreamed. The eternal spear hovered silently, waiting, its weapons locked and dormant. The scientists quickly confirmed that the ship responded only to human DNA. They tested soldiers, technicians, and even politicians who arrived to witness the miracle. Every human could awaken some reaction, but the bond was strongest with Elena, as though the ship had chosen her. Reports of the awakening spread in secret, reaching even the highest councils of Earth's governments. Fear grew quickly. If one ship could stir with such power, what would happen if the entire fleet came alive? Could humanity even control them? Or would the ships control humanity? Unknown to the people of Earth, far beyond the solar system, alien eyes were watching. The signal from Mars had already reached distant civilizations, and now their long-range scanners picked up the awakening energy from Antarctica. In the halls of a great alien empire, ancient rulers trembled. They recognized the energy patterns, instantly. It was the Terran fleet, the scourge of the galaxy from a war so old that most species only remembered fragments of the nightmare. The galaxy had thought them extinct, erased from history, never to rise again. And yet the fleet was stirring once more. Panic spread among the alien rulers. Some demanded immediate attack before the Terran fleet was fully awake. Others argued that humanity might not even understand the power they had discovered. But all agreed on one thing. If the flagship of the Terrans ever rose again, the galaxy itself would tremble. Back on Earth, governments argued, but time was running out. The eternal spear began transmitting signals, scanning the stars as if searching for enemies. Its systems were beyond human understanding, but it clearly knew something. Elena tried to convince the world leaders that the fleet was humanity's only chance. Whatever disturbance was approaching from deep space, it was coming fast. Humanity needed the fleet. Yet many still doubted. Some feared the ships would bring destruction not only to enemies but to Earth itself. As debates raged, the eternal spear rose fully out of the chamber, breaking through the ice with a roar like thunder. The ground split apart as the ancient warship emerged into the open sky for the first time in thousands of years. Soldiers and scientists watched in awe as the ship hovered above Antarctica, its dark hull glistening against the pale sun. The world had changed forever. The fleet was awakening. The universe was watching, and humanity had taken its first step into a war it did not yet understand. Far beyond the quiet blue planet of Earth, in a region of space filled with swirling nebulae and ancient stars, an alien council gathered inside a vast chamber carved from black crystal. Their faces were grim, their voices sharp, and their fear unhidden. The news had spread quickly across the galaxy. The signal from Mars had been detected, and then another disturbance from the frozen world of Earth's southern pole. For most younger species, the readings meant nothing, just strange energy pulses. But for the oldest empires, for those who had survived the wars of the past, the meaning was clear. The Terrans were stirring again. The name alone carried weight, whispered like a curse among the stars. Millennia ago, before many modern civilizations had even learned to sail between planets, there had been a war so devastating that entire star systems were burned to ash. The enemy had not been some monstrous alien race, but a species of humans that rose from a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy. The Terrans had wielded ships unlike anything seen before, war machines that could shatter moons and bend the very laws of physics. It had taken the united strength of dozens of alien empires to finally bring them down, or at least that was what the legends claimed. The galaxy had thought them extinct, buried under the dust of history. But now, with the awakening of one ship, the Eternal Spear, the nightmare had returned. Inside the council chamber, the alien leaders argued fiercely. A scaled warlord slammed his claws against the table, declaring that Earth must be destroyed immediately before the rest of the fleet awakened. A tall, crystalline being with a voice, like ringing bells, warned that moving too quickly could provoke the Terrans into reactivating more of their ships. Others remembered the destruction of their ancestors and shuddered. They spoke of cities consumed in seconds, of fleets turned to fire in the void. If the fleet awakens, one ancient alien whispered, then no force in the galaxy will stop them. They will rise as they did before, and all our empires will fall. The council reached only one agreement. A scout fleet must be sent at once to confirm the awakening. The chosen fleet, sleek and armed with the latest alien weapons, departed within days, moving through the stars like shadows. Their mission was simple: observe, report, and if possible, eliminate the threat before it grew. Back on Earth, humanity was still unaware of the fear they had unleashed across the galaxy. The Eternal Spear hovered above the icy plains of Antarctica, silent yet alive, its hull glowing with faint patterns as if dreaming. Governments tried desperately to keep the discovery secret, but the ship's appearance could not be hidden forever. Satellites captured its image, and soon whispers spread among the public. Rumors of a giant black warship in the skies filled. The internet, dismissed by some as conspiracy, but believed by many. Inside the ship, Dr. Elena and her team studied the systems with growing amazement. The controls were not like anything modern humans understood. They were alive, responsive, and they recognized her presence as if she were not a stranger, but a rightful commander. When she touched the panels, the ship responded like a loyal hound to its master, awaiting orders. She felt both awe and dread, for she knew the ship carried power beyond imagination. Then something happened that froze her blood. Without her command, the Eternal Spear turned its sensors outward, scanning the depths of space. Its voice rumbled again through the chamber, speaking in human words that felt older than time itself. They are coming. The message spread like fire through the base. Who was coming? What enemy did the ship sense? Panic rippled among the military commanders, but Elena knew this was no false alarm. The fleet had enemies that remembered, and they were drawing near. In the following nights, strange objects were detected at the edge of the solar system. Small but fast, they moved with precision, slowing as they reached Neptune's orbit. At first, human scientists thought they were meteors or comets, but the Eternal Spear identified them instantly. Alien ships. The scout fleet had arrived. The alien commanders stared in disbelief as they saw the Terran warship floating above Antarctica through their long-range sensors. The energy it radiated was unmistakable. It was not just an old machine. It was alive, awake, and ready. Fear gripped them, but duty bound them to act. They sent coded messages back to their empires, warning that the nightmare was real. The Terran fleet breathes again. On Earth, world leaders argued through sleepless nights. Some wanted to fire nuclear weapons at the alien scouts before they came closer. Others begged for diplomacy, fearing that aggression would start a war humanity could not survive. Elena, however, trusted the Eternal Spear's instincts. She believed the ship knew more than they did, as if it carried the memories of ancient wars inside its core. She spent long hours inside the vessel, trying to understand its systems, but each answer only led to more mysteries. The walls of the ship sometimes pulsed like a heartbeat, and in those moments she heard whispers in her mind, voices of ancient Terran commanders urging her to prepare. One night, when the base outside was quiet and the cold winds howled over the frozen plains, the ship spoke again. Its voice was deep, calm, yet heavy with warning. The scouts are near. If they return, more will follow. If they strike, humanity must stand. Elena trembled as she listened. The choice was terrifying. Humanity was not ready for a war among the stars, yet fate had thrust them into it. The next day, telescopes confirmed the alien fleet was approaching Jupiter. There were only a dozen ships, but their weapons were powerful, designed to destroy planets if needed. Humanity watched in fear as the aliens advanced. For the first time in history, mankind knew it was not alone, and its first meeting with extraterrestrial life would not be peace, but war. Soldiers stood ready on Earth, though their weapons were useless against such power. Only the Eternal Spear stood as a shield, a relic from a forgotten past, yet stronger than anything modern humans could imagine. Elena stood at the command chamber of the ship, her hand resting on the living controls, her heart pounding with fear and determination. Outside, the warship's hull glowed brighter, preparing for battle. In the distance, beyond the cold orbits of the outer planets, alien ships gleamed in the darkness, moving like predators toward their prey. The galaxy had remembered humanity, and it came not with open arms, but with fire. The first clash between humanity and the stars was about to begin, and the universe itself held its breath. The world was divided like never before as the news of the approaching alien fleet reached the highest councils of Earth. In secret bunkers and hidden chambers, leaders of nations argued through endless nights, their voices raised in anger, fear, and desperation. Some demanded that the Eternal Spear be destroyed before it could drag humanity into a war they could not win, while others saw it as the only hope of survival. Generals slammed their fists on tables, insisting that the alien ships gathering near Jupiter were proof that war was coming, whether humanity wanted it or not. Scientists warned that the power within the ancient Terran warships was still not fully understood, and tampering with such technology might bring disaster. The public had begun to suspect the truth despite every effort to silence the rumors. Grainy images of the massive black warship floating above Antarctica had spread across the internet, and though governments dismissed them as hoaxes, millions believed. Fear filled the streets as people whispered of alien invasions and ancient doomsday machines. Yet in the middle of this storm, Dr. Elena Morris remained calm, her mind locked on the Eternal Spear. She spent hours inside the ship, studying the glowing patterns on its walls, listening to its deep hum, feeling its silent presence pressing against her thoughts. She knew the ship was waiting, watching, judging. It was not a mere machine, but something more, something alive. Every time she placed her hand upon its surface, she felt the whisper of memories not her own. Fleets burning across alien skies, commanders giving orders in voices of steel, and battles that shook galaxies. Humanity had once commanded these ships, and now, whether ready or not, they would have to command them again. A new discovery deepened the mystery. The scientists studying the fleet found that the ships responded only to human DNA, but not just any DNA. The stronger the genetic connection to ancient bloodlines, the stronger the reaction. It was as though the ships recognized descendants of their first masters. Elena herself had shown the most powerful bond, but others too felt the ships stir when they approached. Soldiers chosen to test the controls reported strange sensations, as if the ships were reading their thoughts. Some fainted from the intensity, others wept, and a few whispered that the ships spoke to them in dreams. World leaders grew uneasy. If these ships could be controlled only by humans, then who among them had the right to command such power? The arguments turned political, with nations accusing each other of trying to claim the fleet for themselves. But while humanity fought within, the aliens gathered without. The scout fleet near Jupiter had begun transmitting powerful signals, calling for reinforcements. Time was slipping away. Elena knew that if humanity could not unite, the galaxy would not wait for them. One evening, standing before the eternal spear, she asked aloud what she had been too afraid to say before. "Why now? Why wake after so long?" The ship answered, its deep voice echoing in the chamber. "The enemy stirs. The cycle begins again. You must rise, or you will fall." The words chilled her. The ship was not only aware of the aliens near Jupiter. It remembered the ancient war and knew that the same enemy had returned. That night, she went before the council of leaders and spoke with a fire in her voice that silenced even the loudest generals. She told them plainly that humanity had no choice. The alien fleet was already here and others would come. The ships buried on Earth were not a curse but a shield, a weapon left for their children to wield when the universe turned against them. She reminded them of the message found on Mars: awaken only if the universe needs us. And now the universe did. Her words carried weight, for she was the only one the eternal spear had chosen. Reluctantly, the council agreed to continue unlocking the fleet, though many still doubted. But as they argued, the aliens made their first move. A sudden burst of energy rippled across space, detected by human telescopes. The scout fleet had destroyed one of Jupiter's moons to test their weapons, sending a silent warning. Humanity was running out of time. Panic erupted across Earth. In cities, people prayed or rioted. In bunkers, leaders debated evacuation plans that seemed pointless against such overwhelming power. In Antarctica, the eternal spear waited calmly, its glowing hull reflecting the weak sun, as though unconcerned by the fear of mortals. Elena spent another night inside, joined by a group of carefully chosen soldiers who would serve as the first crew. The ship accepted them, each in different ways. Some felt a rush of energy, others saw fragments of ancient battles, but all knew they were part of something larger than themselves. For the first time, humanity felt the stirring of unity, fragile but real. Meanwhile, in the distant council chambers of the alien coalition, panic was spreading. Reports from the scout fleet confirmed the awakening of one Terran warship. The energy readings alone terrified them. Some demanded immediate annihilation of Earth before more ships could rise. Others feared that a premature strike would provoke the full awakening of the fleet. But one thing was certain. The coalition would not allow the Terrans to return. A massive invasion was planned. Back on Earth, the scientists discovered another truth hidden within the ships. The fleet was connected, linked through an ancient network that spanned the planet. If one ship awoke, it would call to the others. Already, faint energy signals had begun to rise from deep under the oceans, deserts, and the mountains. Humanity's ancestors had buried the ships everywhere, scattered across the world, hidden in plain sight. The eternal spear was only the beginning. Elena felt both awe and fear as she realized the scale. Humanity had not uncovered a single ship. They had uncovered the key to an entire fleet. As the alien scouts prepared their strike near Jupiter, the eternal spear stirred again. Its voice thundered through the chamber, shaking the walls. "The time is near. Choose, children of Earth. Will you fight or will you fall?" And in that moment, standing before the ancient warship, Elena knew the choice had already been made. Humanity was divided in fear, but the universe would not wait for them to debate. The enemy was coming, and the only path left was forward. The first battle was no longer a question of if, but when, and the eternal spear was ready. The first clash between humanity and the stars began in the cold emptiness near Jupiter, where the alien scout fleet had gathered like vultures circling their prey. A dozen sleek ships of unknown design hung in the void, their dark surfaces reflecting the faint sunlight, their weapons already charged. They had not come for peace. Their orders were simple: destroy the awakened Terran warship before the rest of the fleet could rise. From Earth's perspective, the threat was terrifying, for no human-made weapon could even hope to reach them in time. But humanity was no longer helpless. Hovering above Antarctica, the eternal spear hummed with life, its dark hull pulsing as though eager for battle. Dr. Elena Morris stood at its command chamber surrounded by her small crew of scientists and soldiers who had been chosen to serve as the first Terran commanders of the New Age. None of them fully understood the ship, yet they felt its presence guiding them, whispering instructions in thoughts and visions. When Elena placed her hand upon the glowing panel, the ship's deep voice filled the chamber. "Enemy fleet approaches. Engage!" Her heart pounded as she gave the only answer possible. "Yes, engage!" The eternal spear rose higher into Earth's atmosphere, its engines glowing with a light that defied physics. With a sudden burst, it tore free from the planet, accelerating at a speed no modern ship could dream of. Within minutes, it had crossed the void between Earth and Jupiter, leaving streaks of fire behind as if the heavens themselves bent to its will. The alien scouts detected the approach instantly. Their commanders laughed at the sight of a single ship. They expected an easy victory for what was one vessel against 12 armed with the latest weapons of the coalition. They prepared to surround and crush it, confident that history would not repeat itself. But the Eternal Spear was no ordinary ship. As it reached the orbit of Jupiter, its black hull shimmered, unfolding strange shapes along its surface like blades of light. Weapons that had slept for millennia came alive, humming with deadly energy. The alien fleet opened fire first. Beams of plasma streaked across the void, missiles erupted like swarms of fireflies, and space itself seemed to tremble. Yet when the weapons struck the Eternal Spear, they bent and dissolved as though hitting a shield of invisible force. The ship did not flinch. In response, Elena felt the controls come alive beneath her hands, guiding her. She did not even need to think. Her instincts fused with the ship's will. Together they struck back. From the hull of the Eternal Spear, a blade of pure energy extended, cutting through the dark like a sunlit sword. With one sweep, it sliced an alien cruiser in half, its burning remains scattering into the void. The other ships panicked, pulling back in confusion. They had expected resistance, but not this. Another weapon activated, this one a storm of light particles that erupted outward like 1,000 arrows. 2 more alien vessels were torn apart in seconds. Elena gasped at the power, her crew staring in awe as the ship fought like a living warrior, precise and ruthless. But the aliens were not weak. They regrouped quickly, attacking in formation, attempting to overwhelm the warship from all sides. Explosions lit the blackness around Jupiter as missiles and energy beams filled the void. The eternal spear spun with unnatural agility, its massive frame moving like a predator dancing among prey. Each strike it unleashed destroyed another enemy, ship, but for every kill more fire rained upon it. Inside, Elena felt the pressure building, the ship straining as its shields absorbed the endless barrage. Sweat dripped down her face as she held on, whispering encouragement to the vessel as though it could hear. And it did. The eternal spear's voice rumbled deep within her mind. Do not fear. I was forged for this. Together we endure. With a final surge of energy, the warship unleashed its most devastating weapon. A sphere of light formed at its core, glowing brighter and brighter until it erupted outward in a wave of pure force. The shockwave tore through the alien formation, ripping ships apart as though they were made of paper. Fire and debris scattered across space. When the light faded, only 2 alien vessels remained, limping and broken. They fled desperately into the dark, sending frantic transmissions to their masters. Humanity had won its first battle among the stars. Inside the ship, silence fell. Elena and her crew stared at each other in disbelief. They had faced 12 warships armed with the most advanced alien technology and survived. More than survived. They had triumphed. Yet the victory carried a heavy weight. The Eternal Spear's voice spoke again, not with triumph, but with warning. This was only the beginning. They will return, stronger, united. The storm has awakened. Back on Earth, the news spread quickly, despite the government's attempts to keep it secret. Word leaked of a battle near Jupiter, of alien ships destroyed by a vessel not of this time. The people of Earth were torn between terror and pride. For the first time, humanity had fought the stars, and won. In the alien coalition, panic spread, like wildfire. The scout fleet's destruction confirmed the worst fears of the Elder Empires. The Terran fleet had truly awakened, and their weapons were as devastating as the legends had warned. The council gathered once more, their voices filled with dread. "If this is only one ship," one leader whispered, "what will happen if they awaken the rest?" Across the galaxy, fleets were mobilized, armies prepared, and alliances forged. In haste. The galaxy had chosen to unite once more, not in peace, but in fear of the return of humanity. On Earth, Elena knew none of this, but she could feel the weight of destiny pressing down on her. The Eternal Spear had shown its strength, but it had also revealed its presence to every watching eye in the cosmos. There would be no turning back. Now. The war had begun, and humanity's forgotten fleet was their only hope of survival. As the Eternal Spear drifted above the scarred orbit of Jupiter, its dark hull glowing faintly against the cold stars, Elena whispered to herself words that felt both like a promise and a curse. "We have awakened, and the universe will remember us." The smoke of the first battle still lingered in the orbit of Jupiter, where the broken remains of the alien scout fleet drifted silently among the rings of dust and shattered rock. Humanity had won, but the victory was fragile. For the Eternal Spear had shown its strength to the universe, and the universe had been listening. Across Earth, news of the clash leaked through hidden channels, despite the government's attempts to smother the truth. Conspiracy theories turned into headlines, whispers turned into shouts, and soon billions of people knew that aliens were real and that humanity's future had changed forever. Some rejoiced, filled with pride that Earth had stood its ground against visitors from the stars. Others trembled, fearing that the battle was only the first step toward extinction. Yet in secret chambers beneath Antarctica, the scientists and soldiers working around the Eternal Spear were uncovering truths, even more shocking than the battle itself. The ship was not only a weapon, it was a library, a vessel that carried memories older than all of recorded history. When Elena touched the glowing panels, visions flooded her mind. Flashes of humanity's forgotten empire, fleets stretching across galaxies, cities carved into the hearts of suns, and soldiers who stood unafraid against monsters that no book had ever recorded. She saw battles not fought on Earth, but in distant star systems where Terran banners once flew proudly, symbols of a civilization so mighty that its enemies called them gods of war. And then she saw the fall. Entire fleets burning, planets collapsing into silence, and the Terrans vanishing not because they were defeated, but because they chose to disappear. When the visions faded, Elena stumbled back trembling. She realized that humanity had not always been young and fragile. Once they had ruled the stars, but something had driven them to erase themselves from history. Later, when the scientists examined the data stored within the Eternal Spear, they confirmed what she had seen. The fleet buried beneath Earth and Mars was only a fragment of what once existed. Millennia ago, humanity had commanded thousands of ships, each a titan of war. But at the height of their power, they had sealed them away and left no record of their empire. Why would a civilization so strong choose to vanish? The ship itself answered with words that chilled every listener. We hid because the enemy would never stop. We chose silence over annihilation. We left the fleet for those who would come after, in case the universe turned against you. This revelation spread through the secret halls of power like fire. Humanity's ancestors had not been destroyed by accident or natural disaster. They had hidden themselves deliberately, erasing their own past to protect their descendants. The leaders of Earth struggled to understand what kind of enemy could force such a choice. Yet far across the galaxy, the alien coalition remembered, all too well. In their council chambers, leaders replayed the reports from the scouts near Jupiter. The Eternal Spear's weapons matched the legends of the ancient Terran fleet. The stories told by their ancestors were true. Once, the Terrans had fought them all, carving through empires with terrifying power. The war had ended only when humanity vanished. Now, with even one ship active, panic consumed them. They spoke of forming a coalition stronger than any before, uniting their fleets to strike at Earth before the rest of the warships could rise. Their fear was great, but their determination was greater, for they knew that if the Terran flagship ever awakened, no army could stand against it. On Earth, the discovery of the fleet's true past deepened divisions among humanity. Some leaders argued that the ships should be sealed away again, locked in the ice and forgotten. They believed awakening the entire fleet would only bring the full wrath of the galaxy down upon Earth. Others insisted that humanity had no choice. The aliens would not forgive, and the only hope of survival was to reclaim their forgotten power. Protests erupted in cities around the world as the truth continued to leak. Some marched proudly, declaring that humanity was destined to rise again. Others shouted in fear, calling the fleet a curse that would doom them all. Elena found herself at the center of this storm. The Eternal Spear had chosen her, and the visions it shared weighed heavily on her soul. She walked the silent corridors of the ship late at night, listening to its hum, wondering if she was truly worthy to stand where ancient commanders once stood. Yet whenever doubt filled her heart, the ship whispered to her, steady and strong. "You are Terran. You are the child of those who came before. Their blood flows in you. Their strength is yours." Slowly, other ships began to stir. Across the planet, faint energy readings were detected in remote regions. In the depths of the Pacific Ocean, scanners picked up vibrations too precise to be natural. In the deserts of Africa, the ground trembled as buried structures shifted in the sand. In the mountains of Asia, strange lights flickered at night, unseen for thousands of years. Humanity began to realize that the fleet was not just in Antarctica. It was everywhere, hidden across the world, waiting to be claimed. The Eternal Spear had awakened the others, calling to them like a leader summoning its army. The fear among the alien coalition deepened. Reports from their spies confirmed the truth. The Terran fleet was stirring. The coalition sent desperate messages between their empires, urging for immediate war. They could not allow humanity to rise again. The shadow of the ancient war loomed over them like a nightmare reborn. As humanity argued, as protests filled the streets and secret councils debated, a storm was building in the stars. The aliens were not waiting. Their fleets were already mobilizing, gathering in the darkness beyond Pluto, preparing for the invasion. Elena stood once more at the heart of the eternal spear, her hand on the glowing surface, her eyes burning with determination. She knew the truth now. Humanity was not just a fragile young race. They were heirs to a legacy of power and courage. They had fallen once, but now they had risen again. The aliens feared them not because of what they were now, but because of what they had once been, and what they might become again. The ship's deep voice filled the chamber with a final warning. The coalition gathers. The galaxy remembers. The storm approaches. Awaken the fleet, or be swept away. And with those words, Elena knew that the time for doubt had ended. The forgotten history of humanity had returned, and the universe itself trembled at its awakening. Beneath oceans and mountains, in deserts and frozen plains, the ancient heartbeat of the Terran fleet began to echo across the earth as more warships stirred from their endless sleep. The eternal spear was no longer alone. Across the Pacific Ocean, fishermen reported strange lights deep under the waves, glowing lines that stretched for miles before vanishing into the depths. In the Sahara Desert, seismic sensors detected vibrations like the march of giants, shaking the sands until enormous black structures pushed slowly upward. In the Himalayas, climbers claimed to hear low thunder rolling beneath the mountains, though the skies were clear. The fleet was awakening, one ship after another, drawn by the call of the eternal spear. Elena stood at the command chamber, watching the data streams pour in from around the world. Every reading confirmed what she already felt inside. The ships were answering their leader's call. She felt both awe and dread. The power hidden across the earth was beyond imagination, yet she knew that every ship that rose would only make the galaxy more afraid. Already the alien coalition had begun moving fleets into position beyond Pluto. Humanity had little time before war arrived at their doorstep. Governments scrambled to respond to the awakening. Some sent soldiers to secure the sites where ships were surfacing, while others tried to hide their discoveries from the rest of the world, desperate to claim these weapons for themselves. The United Nations attempted to form a joint command, but mistrust and rivalry ran deep. Nations accused one another of plotting to seize the fleet. Yet no matter their politics, the truth remained. Only humans could awaken the ships, and the ships seemed to choose their commanders. Elena was not the only one. Reports began to emerge of others who felt the same bond when touching the ancient hulls. In Africa, a young pilot collapsed when the surface of a buried warship glowed beneath his hands, and when he awoke, he claimed to have seen visions of a golden city in the stars. In South America, a woman heard the voice of a ship whisper her name in the wind. These chosen were rare, but the pattern was clear. The fleet was not bound to governments or armies. It was bound to humanity itself. Inside the eternal spear, Elena began training her small crew. The ship guided them, showing them how to merge thought with action, how to control weapons with instinct rather than buttons. The learning was not easy. Some of the crew fainted under the strain, their minds overwhelmed by the ship's vast intelligence. Others struggled to stay calm when visions of ancient battles filled their heads. But slowly they adapted, and for the first time in millennia, humans began to fly a Terran warship as their ancestors once had. Outside, the people of Earth watched in awe as the ships emerged. Towering hulls rose from the seas like mountains, their surfaces gleaming with strange lights. Cities trembled as shadows of colossal vessels passed overhead. Some cheered, waving banners and calling the ships guardians of Earth. Others screamed, in fear. convinced that the war machines would bring nothing but doom. Religion, science, and politics collided as humanity struggled to understand its own forgotten legacy. In the depths of space, the alien coalition saw all of this and grew more desperate. Their scouts returned with reports of multiple ships awakening, their energy signatures burning brighter than stars. The coalition's leaders knew that time was running out. They remembered the devastation of the First Terran Wars, when their ancestors had united only after entire civilizations had been erased. They swore they would not repeat that mistake. Preparations began for a massive invasion. Thousands of ships gathered in hidden staging grounds beyond the solar system, forming the largest fleet the galaxy had seen in ages. The coalition's plan was simple: strike fast, destroy Earth before the Terran fleet could fully awaken, and bury humanity forever. Back on Earth, Elena sensed the storm approaching. The eternal spear pulsed with warning, its voice echoing in her mind. "They come united. They fear your awakening. Call your brothers. Call your sisters. Call the fleet." She obeyed, standing before the councils of Earth and urging them to set aside their divisions. She told them the truth, that the aliens would not wait, that humanity could no longer afford to be fractured. Some leaders listened, their fear turning into resolve. Others resisted, clinging to old rivalries. But as more ships rose from the depths and the skies filled with their shadows, it became harder to deny that humanity had been chosen to fight. One by one, commanders were found, ordinary men and women who felt the call of the ships and could command them through bond and bloodline. They came from every corner of the Earth: soldiers, farmers, students, engineers, and each was linked to a warship that recognized them as kin. Together they formed the beginnings of a new fleet, a unity, not of nations but of people. Training was chaotic and difficult. The ships were alive, and each had its own temperament. Some were calm and patient, guiding their chosen gently. Others were fierce and demanding, pushing their commanders to the edge of exhaustion. Disputes broke out as personalities clashed, yet the bond between ship and human only grew stronger. Slowly, humanity's fleet began to breathe again. The people of Earth watched in wonder as dozens of warships hovered above oceans and deserts, their glowing hulls like constellations come down to walk among them. For the first time in history, humanity saw itself not as divided nations, but as a single species standing together before the stars. But fear never left. Everyone knew the aliens were watching, and soon they would strike. The eternal spear reminded Elena of this truth constantly. Each night when she closed her eyes, she felt the ship's voice, deep and steady, telling her that the first battle near Jupiter was nothing compared to what was coming. She began to dream of a massive armada filling the skies, alien warships, blotting out the stars. Sometimes she woke trembling, yet always she found strength in the hum of the eternal spear beside her. The universe had given humanity no choice. The fleet was awake, the aliens were coming, and the war for survival had already begun. Still, in her heart, Elena believed that this was not only survival, it was destiny. Humanity had been forgotten by the galaxy, buried beneath time and silence. But now the fleet rose once more. And with every new ship that awakened, with every commander who stepped forward, the universe trembled a little more. The message sent from Earth was no longer silence. It was a declaration carried across the stars, a promise carved in steel and fire. Humanity has returned. The darkness beyond Pluto shimmered with countless lights as the alien coalition gathered its armada, a force so vast that even the stars seemed to dim behind it. Thousands of warships from dozens of civilizations floated in formation, their commanders united by fear of one enemy: humanity. They remembered the old legends, the wars their ancestors barely survived, and they knew that if the Terran fleet fully awakened, no alliance could stand against it. In their secret councils, they spoke only one decision: Earth must fall before the past rose again. Meanwhile, on Earth, the awakening spread like wildfire. From the depths of the Pacific rose the Leviathan, a colossal vessel whose hull shimmered like the ocean's surface and whose awakening shook the waves into massive storms. In the Sahara Desert, the Sandstrider emerged, a sleek warship shaped like a blade, its hull covered in ancient carvings that glowed as if burning with inner fire. In the icy peaks of the Himalayas, the Starhammer lifted itself from its tomb of rock, scattering avalanches as it took to the skies. Dozens of ships answered the Eternal Spear's call, and each one found its chosen human. Farmers, scientists, pilots, children of no special background, all were bound by bloodline and destiny to command the vessels of their ancestors. The governments of Earth tried desperately to control this awakening, but the truth had already gone beyond them. These ships did not belong to nations, they belonged to humanity itself. And for the first time in history, people across the world began to see themselves not as divided races, but as one species standing beneath the rising shadows of their ancient fleet. Elena walked the command chamber of the Eternal Spear, her mind linked to the ship's vast intelligence. Every hour brought new reports of awakenings. Every hour the ship whispered of war drawing closer. She felt the weight of responsibility heavy on her shoulders. It was not just about Earth anymore. It was about proving to the galaxy that humanity would not be broken, not again. But fear lingered. She could see it in the eyes of the new commanders, many of them untrained, struggling to understand the visions that flooded their minds whenever they touched their ships. Some were strong, quick to adapt, but others were overwhelmed, their thoughts crushed under the memories of a war fought thousands of years ago. The Eternal Spear guided them as best it could, offering knowledge piece by piece. But Elena knew time was short. The alien fleet was already moving. The first sign came from Neptune, where human probes detected energy readings far greater than anything seen before. A shadow darker than the void itself appeared, a massive alien dreadnought leading the vanguard. Soon, dozens of smaller ships followed, their engines burning blue and red against the darkness. Humanity's scientists warned that the invasion would reach Earth within weeks. Panic spread across the globe. Some cities erupted in chaos, people demanding their leaders surrender before destruction came. Others rallied behind the fleet, declaring that humanity would rise to its destiny. Protests and celebrations clashed in the streets, but the one truth that silenced them all was this: there was no escape. The war was coming. At a secret gathering of the chosen commanders, Elena spoke to them directly. They met not as representatives of nations, but as guardians of humanity. She looked into their eyes and told them the truth. The coalition comes not because of what we are now, but because of what we were. They fear us because they know what our ancestors built. They will not stop until we are erased. We cannot let them succeed. We must fight, not as fragments, not as strangers, but as one. Her words struck deep, and one by one the commanders agreed. The fleet would fight together. Training intensified. The Eternal Spear led exercises in orbit, teaching the new ships to move as one, their weapons combining into devastating strikes. Battles were simulated against alien tactics remembered from the past, and though mistakes were many, the fleet grew stronger each day. Humanity was learning to fight like its ancestors once had. Yet even as the fleet prepared, Elena sensed something deeper stirring within the Eternal Spear. At night she dreamed of a hidden chamber locked deep within the ship's core. The visions grew stronger, showing her a vault filled with data and secrets long forgotten. When she finally followed the visions and entered the chamber, she discovered what the ancestors had hidden there. It was not just knowledge, it was a map. A star chart of places where other parts of the ancient Terran Empire might still sleep. Entire fleets scattered across distant galaxies, waiting just as Earth's fleet had waited. Elena's heart pounded as she realized the truth. Earth's fleet was not the only remnant. Humanity's empire might not be entirely lost. But before she could tell the others, the Eternal Spear warned her. Do not reveal this yet. They are not ready. The enemy must first be faced here. Only then can the true path be taken. Torn between hope and duty, Elena kept the secret locked in her heart. The Coalition armada drew closer, their fleets now gathering at the edge of the solar system. Probes sent by Earth captured images of thousands of alien ships, each one armed for war. The sight spread terror across the world, but it also hardened resolve. Humanity now understood that survival depended on unity. For the first time in history, the divisions of nations truly began to fade. Supplies, resources, and people flowed to the commanders. Engineers worked day and night to repair and prepare the awakening ships. Families volunteered to support the crews, building networks of trust between strangers. The fleet was becoming more than machines. It was becoming the heart of humanity. As the alien coalition prepared its strike, Elena stood upon the bridge of the Eternal Spear and looked out into the endless dark. She could feel them coming, the weight of their hatred pressing closer with every heartbeat. The ship whispered to her, steady and calm, as if it had seen this moment before. They believe they will end you. They believe they will erase you. Show them they are wrong. Show them humanity remembers. And as the other Terran ships formed their ranks beside her, their commanders linked by visions of ancient battles and shared purpose, Elena felt the first true spark of what her ancestors must have once felt. Humanity was not only ready to defend itself. Humanity was ready to rise. Far beyond, the alien armada crossed the threshold of the solar system. The war for Earth had begun. The alien armada swept into the solar system like a tide of shadows blotting out the stars, thousands of warships advancing in perfect formation as they crossed Neptune's orbit. Their engines burned like cold fire, leaving trails of light that shimmered against the void. Each vessel carried the weight of civilizations, united by fear, bound by one mission: destroy Earth before the Terran fleet could fully awaken. The Coalition admirals were confident. They remembered the stories of their ancestors, the devastation wrought by humanity long ago, but they believed that this time unity would save them. They would strike fast, with overwhelming numbers, crushing the enemy before its power could rise. But what they did not yet understand was that the Terran fleet was no longer a relic, it was alive, and it had chosen its commanders. At Earth's orbit, the ancient warships assembled, their colossal forms casting shadows across the planet's surface as they aligned into battle formations. The Eternal Spear led the fleet, its vast hull glowing with lines of energy as Elena stood at its command chamber, her thoughts bound to the ship's will. Around her hung the Leviathan with its oceanic shimmer, the Sand Strider gleaming like a burning blade, the Starhammer massive and unyielding, and dozens more ships, each pulsing with awakening power. Their chosen commanders stood ready, ordinary humans no longer ordinary, their minds sharpened by the ship's guidance. For the first time in millennia, the Terran fleet breathed as one. On Earth, billions watched from screens and observatories, their hearts heavy with fear, but also burning with a strange new hope. Never before had humanity faced such an enemy, and yet never before had humanity stood so united. The first clash came near Saturn, where a vanguard of alien ships rushed ahead to test the Terran defenses. They expected an easy slaughter, assuming. The ancient vessels were slow and uncoordinated. But when their weapons fired, beams of energy cutting across the void, the Eternal Spear answered. Its shields unfolded like wings of light, absorbing the barrage before unleashing a counterstrike that tore through the alien formation with blinding precision. The Leviathan surged forward, waves of gravitational force crashing into enemy hulls and crushing them as if they were fragile shells. The Starhammer descended like a meteor, its cannons blazing, shattering dreadnoughts with each strike. The aliens reeled, their confidence broken, as the Terran fleet revealed the truth. The ships were not relics. They were predators awakened from sleep. Across the galaxy, news of the battle spread, carried by coalition scouts who barely escaped the slaughter. Civilizations watching from afar trembled, remembering the fear their ancestors had spoken of. The humans had risen again, and their fleet was already proving unstoppable. But the coalition was vast, and the vanguard was only a fragment. At Jupiter, the full invasion force assembled, thousands of ships forming a wall of firepower that dwarfed anything humanity had ever seen. Their dreadnoughts were city-sized, bristling with weapons capable of splitting moons, and their smaller craft moved with deadly precision. The coalition admirals believed numbers would still win. Against hundreds, even ancient Terran ships would fall. Elena felt the weight of their presence through the eternal spear, the enemy's energy signatures blazing like storms across the void. Fear whispered at the edges of her thoughts, but the ship steadied her, its voice calm and unwavering. They come with fear as their weapon. We rise with memory as ours. Do not yield. She relayed commands to the other commanders, her voice steady though her heart thundered. The fleet began its advance, forming lines around Jupiter, using the planet's gravity to slingshot into attack positions. When the two armadas finally met, the void itself seemed to ignite. Beams of plasma and streams of missiles streaked across space, colliding with shields that rippled like molten glass. Explosions bloomed brighter than suns as ships shattered, fragments scattering like burning rain across the darkness. The eternal spear struck with surgical precision, carving through cruisers and turning dreadnoughts into drifting hulks. The Leviathan unleashed waves that swallowed whole squadrons, crushing them in invisible fists. The Sandstrider darted through the chaos like a phantom, its weapons slicing apart enemies before they could react. Each Terran ship fought with the fury of a living being, guided not by clumsy command but by the instincts of their human partners. Yet the coalition pressed harder, their numbers overwhelming. For every alien ship destroyed, 2 more emerged from the dark. Terran shields flared and cracked under the relentless fire. One commander screamed as his bond faltered, his ship shuddering before vanishing in a blaze of light. Humanity tasted loss, sharp and bitter. But there was no time to grieve. The battle raged on, endless waves crashing against the fragile line of defenders. On Earth, people held their breath as reports flooded in. They saw flashes of light in the night sky, the echoes of battle reaching even their world. They prayed, they wept, but they did not despair, for they saw the fleet fighting with a unity no enemy could erase. Hours passed, and the battle only grew fiercer. Alien dreadnoughts unleashed weapons not seen before, black hole bombs that tore space itself, energy whips that lashed across kilometers, swarms of automated killers that consumed anything they touched. Against such terror, the Terran fleet stood firm, adapting with every strike. Elena guided the eternal spear through storms of fire, her mind one with the ship, her crew working in seamless harmony. Every time they thought defeat was near, the fleet pushed back harder, driven by something the aliens could not understand: human defiance. Then came the moment that changed everything. As the battle reached its bloodiest point, the eternal spear's hidden chamber unlocked fully, flooding Elena's mind with visions of the past. She saw fleets far greater than hers, entire armadas spanning galaxies, human empires that had ruled the stars. And she saw something else, a signal, ancient and powerful, capable of calling those lost fleets back from their slumber. The eternal. Spear whispered the truth. If we survive this day, the others will awaken. The galaxy will remember. Elena's breath caught, her eyes burning with tears. Humanity's fleet on Earth was only the beginning. Their true strength was still sleeping across the stars. She did not reveal the secret yet, but her heart blazed with hope. And when she looked upon the battle once more, she no longer saw doom. She saw destiny. Around Jupiter, the war burned. On fire and shadow clashing in silence, but the Terran fleet held. Though blood was spilled and ships were lost, humanity refused to break. Against impossible odds, the forgotten children of Earth rose to meet the galaxy's greatest armada. The coalition had come to erase them, but instead they had awoken something far greater. They had awoken the return of humanity. And as the eternal spear carved through the darkness, Elena knew this was only the beginning. The true war had yet to come. The battle around Jupiter had left the solar system scarred, its rings shattered by blasts, its moons pocked with craters glowing with alien fire. Both fleets had paid a terrible price. Hundreds of coalition ships lay broken, their wreckage drifting through the void. Yet the Terran fleet had lost comrades too. Some of humanity's newly awakened warships had fallen, their chosen commanders gone in brilliant flashes that echoed across the darkness. On Earth, billions mourned, but they did not falter. For the first time, humanity grieved as one people, their sorrow bound with resolve. In the silence after the battle, as the survivors regrouped, Elena stood within the eternal spear, her body trembling but her spirit burning brighter than ever. The visions of the hidden chamber still haunted her mind, the knowledge that Earth's fleet was only the beginning. The galaxy itself hid fragments of humanity's ancient empire, fleets scattered and sleeping across forgotten systems, waiting for the signal that would call them home. She knew now that the war with the coalition was not merely a fight for survival, but a test to prove that humanity still deserved its legacy. The alien coalition had underestimated humanity, but they were not yet defeated. Already their scattered forces were regrouping beyond Saturn, reinforced by fresh waves of ships pouring in from interstellar space. The admirals swore vengeance, their pride wounded by the defeat at Jupiter. They had seen the Terran fleet's strength, but they believed that more numbers, more weapons, and more sacrifice could still crush Earth before the other ancient fleets awoke. Humanity had no illusions. The next assault would be even greater. Elena gathered the commanders once again in a council that spanned both orbit and ground. Faces young and old flickered across holographic displays, each one marked by exhaustion and loss, but also unyielding determination. She spoke simply, her words carrying the weight of destiny. We are not fighting only for Earth. We are fighting for what humanity once was and what it can be again. The coalition believes they fight to erase us, but what they do not understand is that every blow they strike only makes us stronger. We are the heirs of an empire they cannot imagine, and today we decide if we rise again. Her speech spread across the world, transmitted by networks and whispered from mouth to mouth until every human knew their place in the great struggle. From farmers in remote villages to scientists in deep laboratories, from children watching the skies to soldiers training for defense, the truth burned in their hearts. They were part of something far greater than themselves. While the coalition prepared its second invasion, the Terran fleet turned inward to heal and grow. Engineers worked tirelessly to repair damaged ships, guided by the knowledge the vessels themselves released. Weapons once thought beyond human understanding became familiar under their hands, and soon Earth's people were no longer mere passengers of their ships, but partners, learning and adapting as quickly as their ancestors had. The surviving commanders, trained day and night, drilling maneuvers in orbit, blending human instinct with the ship's ancient memories. And slowly a transformation began. What had been scattered awakenings became a true fleet, bound not just by history, but by choice. The eternal spear led them with quiet strength, its bond with Elena deepening until she felt as if her very soul was woven into the fabric of the ship. At times, the spear showed her glimpses of what humanity had once achieved, cities drifting, Between stars, worlds reshaped by human hands, fleets so vast they blotted out the heavens. And though the images filled her with awe, they also carried sorrow, for she saw the wars that had brought it all down. Humanity's ancestors had been powerful, but power alone had not saved them. If they were to rise again, they would need something greater: unity, humility, and wisdom. The coalition struck again sooner than expected. Their second wave surged through the void, not toward Jupiter this time, but directly at Earth, hoping to bypass the defenses and strike the planet itself. Billions on the surface cried out in terror as the sky filled with the fire of incoming fleets. But the Terran ships moved faster than the aliens expected. Rising from Earth's orbit like guardians of an ancient crown, the Leviathan, the Starhammer, the Sandstrider, and dozens more warships intercepted the attack before it could reach the atmosphere. The battle that followed was even more brutal than the first. Alien ships poured into the fight in endless waves, hurling weapons that shattered space and ripped apart gravity. The Terran fleet answered with fury, its commanders moving with a synchronicity that defied belief. The Eternal Spear speared through dreadnoughts with beams of pure energy. The Leviathan crushed enemy formations with gravitational tides, the Starhammer struck like thunder, and the Sandstrider carved through the darkness like a blazing comet. Yet even as they fought, the coalition's sheer numbers pressed them back. Some alien ships slipped through the line, their weapons burning against Earth's upper atmosphere. Cities trembled as shields wavered, and for the first time, humanity felt the war touch its home directly. But in that moment of peril, humanity itself rose to fight. From hidden bunkers and orbital platforms, weapons long thought useless blazed to life, guided by civilian hands that refused to surrender. Pilots flew into the void in improvised craft, fighting not with ancient warships, but with courage, buying the fleet precious seconds. Humanity had remembered what it meant to resist. And then Elena acted. Guided by the Eternal Spear, she unleashed the secret the ship had been holding, the ancient signal. From the spear's core erupted a wave of light, invisible yet unstoppable, racing beyond the solar system into the depths of the galaxy. Every awakened ship felt it pulse through their hulls. Every human felt it echo in their blood. Across distant stars the signal spread, touching hidden vaults and silent tombs, stirring sleeping fleets buried in forgotten systems. And far away, in the cold reaches of galaxies unknown, warships that had not stirred in 10,000 years began to wake. The coalition commanders felt the shift, panic creeping into their hearts as their sensors detected strange energy ripples spreading outward. They realized too late what Elena had done. Humanity's empire was no longer just a memory. It was calling itself back to life. With renewed strength, the Terran fleet struck back, their unity and defiance breaking the coalition's will. One by one, the alien ships faltered, their formations crumbling as fear spread among them. For the first time in the war, the invaders began to retreat, scattering into the void, leaving behind wreckage and silence. Humanity had not only survived the assault, but had declared itself to the stars. When the battle ended and the smoke cleared, Earth still stood. The people wept and cheered as the surviving fleet returned, their ships scarred but unbroken. Elena stood within the Eternal Spear, her gaze fixed on the stars beyond. She knew this was not the end. The coalition would regroup and more wars would come. But now humanity was no longer alone. The ancient fleets were awakening across the galaxy, and one by one they would answer the call. The universe had tried to erase humanity, but instead it had reawakened it. And as the Eternal Spear whispered to Elena in the quiet aftermath, she understood the truth that every human now carried in their heart. The galaxy had feared humanity's return, but what it had not realized was that humanity was not only returning, it was rising higher than ever before. This was not the end of the story. This was the beginning of a new age, the rebirth of mankind among the stars.